Good evening. My name is Brian Larkin, and I'm the chair of the history department at St. John's St. Ben's. And I'm really happy that you're all here for tonight's Tegeder Berg Society interactive event on current teaching methods in the history classroom. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the Office of Alumni and Alumni Relations at St. Ben's and St. John's for the work that's made tonight's event possible, and all the other Tegeder Berg Society events. For those of you who are new to the Tegeder Berg Society, it's an association that brings together St. John's and St. Ben's alums, students, both current students and incoming students, and faculty to promote the study of history. Normally, the Tegeder Berg Society hosts one event each fall and one each spring, where students, alums, and faculty meet and network face-to-face after the evening's presentation, and we hope to return to that model soon. So please look for future emails publicizing our event next fall. The Tegeder Berg Society, at its basis, proudly affirms the importance of studying history because the study of history helps us understand the present and navigate the future, and because of its tremendous value for career development. As a history professor, and many of you know me, you know that I could go on and on and on about the value of history, but our alums provide more powerful testimonials. So tonight, as at every other Tegeder Berg Society event, we invite an alum to say a few words about how history has prepared them for life after college. And tonight, Dr. Beth Winkler will introduce our guest alum.
Thank you, Brian. Welcome, everyone. And yes, I'd like to introduce Nicole Kuntz, who's going to give our alum testimonial. She's a history major from the 2016 graduating class. So thank you, Nicole, for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for asking me to do it. Yeah, so class of 2016, so I'm 5 years out from the wonderful times that are St. Ben's and St. John's, and a history major there. And so that's a nice time to reflect on what I have gained from it. And I think, you know, my first job out of college is the one I have today. So I've been 5 years working at a credit union in St. Paul doing risk management work. So I do internal auditing, fraud investigations, and money laundering investigations, which is not a job I would have ever said, that's what I want to do with my history degree, but it actually works really well because it's a lot of investigating and researching, and then you have to write what you find in a way that makes sense to people. And that's what you do in every history class you take at St. Ben's, St. John's, for better or for worse, but that's what I do in my day-to-day job. And I think I wouldn't be as good at it if I didn't have the training of all the classes I took with many of the faculty members I see staring at me today. And so, yeah, it's always fun when people say, you know, what did you study? And they always think I was an accounting major or maybe even a business major. I'm like, no, I studied history. I just found this job. I don't really know. I would have never planned it or planned my life to be that, and I would never go back and change it. I wouldn't be an accounting major just to fit people's perception of what normally this track goes for. I think my history major makes me very apt for the job, and that's sort of how it serves me in a career.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So tonight's Tegeder Berg Society event highlights the innovative pedagogies we use at St. John's St. Ben's to help students nurture their historical imaginations as well as hone their analytical and communication skills. We're going to play a game, a role-playing game set in revolutionary France. And our game master tonight is Dr. Beth Winkler. Many of you already know Dr. Winkler. Beth has taught at St. Ben's and St. John's since 2000. She researches gender and religion in early modern Europe, specifically exploring gendered Protestant religious engagement in 16th century Geneva. She teaches courses on the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the French Revolution, just to name a few. And Beth was an early pedagogical innovator, incorporating role-playing into the classroom years ago. And her pedagogical mastery was recognized when she won the Sister Mary Grill Teacher of Distinction Award in 2010. So tonight we are in excellent hands, and let's hope those hands can help us all keep our heads.
No guarantees. As some of you are well aware. So yeah, welcome everyone. And it's very exciting. I love playing role-playing games. And so tonight we're going to give you a taste of the kind of student-directed learning that the history department values in this form of a role-playing game. So we'll be playing a very short version of a game that ordinarily unfolds over several weeks in class. Players tonight have prepared with some reading in the primary sources and on the characters that they have been assigned to play. And among the players are both veterans, as well as some new to the experience. So I'm very excited to see what will happen. Because this is a role-playing game and not a simulation, the outcomes are not preordained, but dependent upon context and contingency. So what we will do tonight, I'm gonna briefly set the stage for everyone, and then those playing characters will go to assigned breakout rooms to meet with their factions. We are going to divide the observers among those rooms so you can see how the factions prepare to debate the topics that we'll be covering tonight. And then after about 10 to 15 minutes in breakout rooms, we'll come back together in the National Assembly meeting. At that point, Ira Seed, the president of the National Assembly, who is a member of the Feuillante faction, will manage the discussion in the Assembly and the voting on decrees that may be added to the Constitution. But first, some context. 2 years ago, in May 1789, we all convened for the Estates General at Versailles. In June of that year, we all took the tennis court oath not to separate until we'd written a constitution for France. And that's why we're still here. We're working on it. In July 1789, we all witnessed the fall of the Bastille, followed by rioting throughout the countryside, the Great Fear of 1789. And that same month, we voted to adopt the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. In October, there was a women's march to Versailles, which forced the King and Queen and the National Assembly to come to Paris, where the bread shortage remained critical. For the last 2 years, we have been hard at work at the Constitution, and we were very close to adopting a constitutional monarchy until last week. Specifically the night of June 21, 1791, when our King Louis XVI and his family fled Paris and were apprehended in Varennes near the border with the Austrian Netherlands. That has complicated our task. Despite calls for unity, we are in fact divided into 4 factions. The conservative, clerical, and noble deputies to the National Assembly, they signed the tennis court oath, and they believed that the French state needed to be reformed, but have been increasingly disturbed by the revolution's turn against Catholicism and turn towards radicalism. The Feuillante deputies to the National Assembly are revolutionaries but moderates, and were the architects of the constitutional monarchy that was so close to passing before the king took flight. The Jacobin deputies to the National Assembly are radicals who are both anti-clerical and anti-monarchical. The leaders of the section, also known as the crowd, they are not deputies and are therefore excluded from the proceedings, but are a noisy, menacing presence just outside the walls of our assembly meeting room in Paris. So tonight, the factions will debate a specific and important question. What role should the Catholic Church have in France? The factions will consider that question with respect to 3 decrees that they are considering adding to the Constitution. And in fact, if you're interested, I'm going to just share with everybody in the chat. You can see what they are. There we go. I'm going to now ask those participating in the game to change your name to your faction name on Zoom. And if you're wondering how to do that, if you hover over your image and click on the 3 little dots, you can rename yourself. And so we're going to have you rename Clergy or Feuillant or Jacobin sections if you're one of the players. You can certainly add things like a fun red beret, like Citizen Ellie and Citizen Betsy have done. All right. So as if you would just put your faction in front of your name, that would be really helpful. And then I'm going to shift, and I wasn't able to assign breakout rooms in advance because I'm just not that technically savvy, but I'm almost done assigning the players to their breakout rooms. And I'm going to ask the observers, you're also going to join breakout rooms. But I would ask you if you wouldn't mind turning your video off and of course muting yourself so that the players will be able to see themselves and see each other. So they know who's playing. That would be super helpful while you're in the breakout rooms, and also while you're in the National Assembly meeting. So I'm just going to finish this assigning. So excuse me for, let's see. Great. All right. And then I'm just going to open up the rooms, and then if you are in a faction, you just jump into your room and you can start discussing. I'll be coming around into the various breakout rooms, but in the meantime, I will be giving the observers breakout rooms as well. So I just have to divide it up. All right. All right, so now I'm just going to start assigning you to different rooms so that you can participate.
All right.
All right. If we are all ready to begin, then we can start off with our first debate, which we have decided will be the decree on church lands. So if people who want to speak would want to raise their hand, then I can call on them in turn for supporting or being against this. Yes, Mr. Clergy, go right ahead.
I would just like to make it known that the clergy opposes this, particularly on the fact that unless the Huguenots are going to have all of their churches taken as well, this isn't a very equal. Action, and also, if you take our land, you might be damned to hell. So.
But we also must make it known that the Catholic Church owns an incredible amount of land, way too much for its position, especially with how little attention it is paid to its parishioners. And this is the best way that we can support the revolution and keep it moving forward.
And on top of that, the Huguenots, I mean, I can't imagine they own much of even close to the amount of property that the Catholic Church does. If they ever get to that land, we could probably very easily talk about that. But I mean, for now, the Catholic Church has a vast majority of the land in religious groups.
The Huguenot leader also didn't tell us to choose between our country or our religion. And you should choose country.
If you don't choose country, we'll kill you.
Very good point, Citizen Ashley.
The Pope is attempting to incite rebellion amongst the people against the principles of which this Congress must hold dear.
There's a clear choice.
Seems very intelligent. I'm just gonna, and they have wonderful sartorial haberdashery choices. I use big words.
I think by asking, though, the church to give up so much is essentially asking, though, for the church to give up who they are and to give up the stability that the church brings to France. Instead, we work together. We can help you further our goals. We're not saying that some land can't go back to France, but why not we work together to create the stability that France has known, with also furthering the goals of the revolution?
How exactly did the clergy assist us when our children were starving and we marched on the Bastille? How exactly did the clergy help us when we took our freedom for ourselves? What has the church done to help the people of France move forward towards this path of democracy, egalitarianism? And that is exactly why we should pass the decree on church lands, or at least add it to our new constitution.
We've another clergy member would like to speak.
The church lands preserve those who work for the church, who shed their blood for the preservation of the souls of this nation and that of every person on this planet. How dare you suggest that we take these lands away so that we can't feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, continuing our pious duty to preserve the eternal souls of the nation.
You'll
very
Push
much
on,
can
Sal.
still
Wait.
continue you very much can still continue doing your job and helping people. It's just going to be easier for the clergy to do it if it is run through the state rather than through a foreign entity like the Pope.
So you are very concerned about your ability to feel yourself, citizen clergyman. I notice you did not express concern on how to feed the starving children of France and their mothers who could not afford to feed them.
Yeah. I seem to remember them extracting taxes from us as well.
One of the church's main goals is charity for its flock.
And you did such a good job at it with all of the wealth that you had accrued over the years.
My
You
friends
can
and I,
blame
none
that
of
on
us
the
got
king.
charity. Look at all of us. We're angry.
didn't
We
get
have
charity.
flags.
I see you say you seek to preserve the souls of our people. I see you hoarding wealth and seeking and bathing in the corruption that has permeated the society of France, and particularly the nobility. How are you any different than them?
Yeah.
God.
I think what we're
He
hearing.
himself claimed to have God's position, and yet he fled from us and betrayed us when he had the chance.
This is what we're hearing is the people do not feel supported and helped by the church when the church was in control of its own lands and its own funds. So the Jacobin Commission here is also supporting that we keep this in our constitution so that the state can be better prepared to help its own people, because France understands the French people and this foreign pope cannot ever understand. And so how could his priests and his Catholic churches possibly be best proposed to do this? I think it should be run through France, and France can help the French people.
I would agree with that. I believe that citizen clergymen previously wanted to assist the souls of the world, but do you want to help the world or do you want to help France? Ask yourself.
So do we have any more new arguments to bring up, or do we feel we've exhausted reasons for, reasons against?
I'm exhausted. These whiny clergy. Let's get on with it.
Should we take it to a vote?
I believe we should. I believe the best way to do it will be to raise your hand when I say yes if you're in support of it, and raise your hand if you say no if you are not in support of it. So we will begin with those in favor of supporting the civil constitution of the clergy. Raise your hand. Raise your Zoom hand, not your actual hand, if that may help.
Oh, can you clarify what it is we're voting on?
We are voting on introducing the decree on church lands, the decree on church lands into the Constitution. All right. So we looked at, looks like 6 in favor and all those opposed. Citizen Ellie, are you? Yes. So it looks like the vote was a 6-4 vote. And with that, the National Assembly has indeed adopted the decree on church lands.
Asira!
Wise choice. Wise. Smart. Nice.
I believe next on our agenda would be to reaffirm, as I had mentioned before, but spoken out of turn on, to reaffirm the civil constitution of the clergy. This was the constitution that nationalized the Catholic Church in France and prevents the Pope in Rome from controlling French priests and bishops. Enables every community to elect its own priests and arranges for them to be paid by the French government. So who would like to start off speaking either in favor or against this civil constitution of the clergy? Go for it.
I think this is another slam dunker. We just voted that the state should be in charge of church lands, and I think this is a reiteration of that. If we can keep the church under the purview and keep them beholden to their country that they are a part of, I think that this is not much debate required here, guys. Let's just say yes.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go away with that because once again, the state can control the land, but at what point the state controls the dogma of the church, there is no independent church anymore. We are placing too much trust in the reason of man, as Berg would have us believe. And if you want to, I believe many of you follow Rousseau, and he talks about the intolerance being not tolerable for any religion in the state. And it sounds like this new state religion is pretty intolerant towards the Catholic Church. Once again, not a good thing.
Well, you said that the church was independent. When has the church ever been independent from our government? And also, if we are trying to control the abuses that the clergy has committed against its own people, why not have the National Assembly supervise it? Why not make sure us, as a union, control it and make sure that nothing wrong is happening?
For it seems as if you are reluctant to take the very basic oath, sir. Is this oath that only asks for the bishops to be loyal to the nation and the law, and to support with all your power the Constitution decreed by the National Assembly. What is so challenging about that? Is it that you have foreign influences who might hold you against the law and the nation? Is it that a pope, perhaps, is rallying the people of France who call themselves Catholics instead of citizens of France to stand up against the path of righteousness which we, the French people, have encountered upon? What are you afraid of?
To a much higher power, a higher power than the nation itself, the power of God.
We've got your higher power, and it's called a guillotine, pal. Here's the deal. Swear an oath to France or chop chop.
What?
Yeah. What way
are you admitting that you believe that your Pope is an enemy of France? Is this what you are saying?
Because we just killed a lot of people over this. I think you might have missed it.
In what way would your allegiance to France jeopardize that? If you are a servant of the people and a servant of God, in what way can taking this oath jeopardize that?
Well, the Pope would excommunicate us from the church. We wouldn't have any say in the church anymore. And in excommunicating us, that means that all of the peasants in rural France wouldn't have their religion anymore. Most of the peasants are Catholic. And if we put our religion in the hands of the people in the cities, like, it's going to throw the whole direction of the public mind into these like crazy people, you guys.
Right, but I mean, granted, if you live in a rural community, you're still going to be subservient to the rural community. Like, the priest would still be elected and still be serving the rural community. This is still a fair compromise between the priests of the church here and the clergy wanting to practice their religion, and the people who want to see more accountability to the priests that do horrible, horrible abuses to their people.
Surely if you have tended your flock as you claim to have done, then you wouldn't mind being beholden in part to your parishioners because you have practiced what you've preached to them.
Priests do not serve anybody but God. That is the actual fact. When you guys talk about law, the law comes from God. When you talk about rule, rule comes from God. The spirit of religion is the root of manners and civilization. So if you nix religion, established religion, you're turning the lights off without having anything to see when the lights are turned back on.
We're not nixing established religion, though. We are asking you to be loyal to the state, to be loyal to the people in which you are serving. You get your livelihood off of the people within your parish, yet you refuse to say that you are as loyal to them as they are to you.
If you have a purview over the dogma of our church, it is
that's unfair.
It is your
Nope,
church.
Mr. Clergyman, you have officially crossed the line and become an enemy of the nation. We condemn you to death. I'm rallying the troops. We're gonna kill
Cool
him.
with that. Go ahead, martyr me up, baby.
You say you serve no man, you serve the Pope, and the Pope is a man. Let's
burn.
Do this.
Burn him. Off with his head.
Chop it. Chop, chop.
Are we rip it? Okay, can we virtually
Can we rip him in half? Are we doing that too?
Can we virtually rip up an aristo?
Can you order me? I don't know.
We're enraged by the actions of clergy.
We can't start killing everybody we don't like, though.
That's how we have to do it. If they
so far.
stayed alive, then they would still be remaining enemies of the state.
Think about it. But again, we are just Paris. We are not. There are so many people within the countryside that we are not even considering.
We can work together better if Go Pope is dead.
I talk to my neighbors more often than I talk to the Pope.
I think maybe we should consider silencing the members of the crowd momentarily so we can talk about this civilly.
Chop, chop, you too, Mr. Clergy.
Well, let's remember who it is we're serving here today, and that's the will of the French people, this social contract. My dear beloved Rousseau, he talks about it a lot. It's actually all he talks about. And so that's what we're here to do today, is serve the will of the people. The people of France are entering here together. And as we've heard from this really rambunctious crowd, is they have a desire, and they have a desire for the clergy to take an oath of fealty to the people of France, the people whose souls they seek to save. And I think that's a pretty reasonable request. And so I would ask that maybe we can add that into this constitution we're attempting here today, is we can ask the clergy to take an oath that says that they are beholden to the people of France and not the foreign pope. And yes, of course, God has no nation, but he has people who live in France. And that's who we care about today. And so let's talk about that oath. Can we get that oath into law today? I would really like to see it. And I think that mob outside would also really like to see it.
I'd like to go on record that I oppose this, and I serve God, not man.
Yeah, you're dead, buddy.
Let's not kill anyone. Let's vote on this and have it established. We don't just need to kill anybody that disagrees. Let's vote. Let's handle this like mature men, rational men who respect all each other. Because again, in the social contract, everybody has rights, right? So let's respect that.
We got quite a women's march out here.
Always. We always have a women's march. Women are carrying this, but let's listen to them. But let's not kill anyone. That's just a good general stance.
If the crowd and the Jacobins really believed what they said they believe.
Killing people.
How about we take it to a vote? Because again, we are a legislative assembly, right? So let's vote on it. Okay? Raise your hand if you believe that this should be added to the Constitution.
All those who oppose it, chop, chop.
We have, let me count here. We've got my vote, Susan Ellie, Fleon Claire, Jacobin Cass, Jacobin Nicole, and Fleon Megan. Any other votes? Did I miss anybody for yes? If not, then we can vote for those who are opposed to the civil constitution of the clergy.
Vote no if you hate France. Oh, look at that.
Ooh, we got 4 people hating France. Chop, chop.
I love God, not France.
But do you love France?
Not France. He said not France.
He said not France.
He said not France.
Oh, God, he did say that. Get him.
That's it. We're killing him. You're dead.
And I
I'm
believe
cool
with
being
that,
abstained.
the civil constitution of the clergy has passed and has been added to the Constitution of France.
Can I, point of order, can we add an amendment to that, or to any part of this that says any clergyman who would not take that oath can be declared an enemy of the state? I think that's something that the crowd outside would really like to hear. And since they're people, that's the French people, let's go for it. Any debate on that?
Is that entirely necessary though? Because in the decree, they would only be paid via us. The state would pay the clergymen, therefore they would have allegiance to us. What need is there for a provision for them to be enemies of the state when they will just be discredited?
Oh, it's just kind of an obvious corollary. I mean, we might as well just,
If
The
they do
people of
not
France are
declare
enraged
for
by the
France, they
actions
are
of delegates.
traitors to France and should be treated as such.
The people
We
of
wanna
France
see
are
some
enraged by the
real-
actions of clergy go Pope. You want to lynch him?
We want to see some
Kill
real
go Pope.
consequences for people who refuse to take this action that is so strongly desired by the people of France.
Can we agree on some sort of compromise where if these priests do not feel comfortable taking the oath, they have the opportunity to leave France before we instantly declare them enemies of the state and kill them?
Well,
If you let us kill go Pope now, we'll think about it.
let me.
You want to make me a saint? I'm cool with it.
I'm
My
sorry,
fealty is to Christ.
do we
Not
allow
a saint in
pickpockets
France.
to leave France before if when we catch them stealing? Do we allow do we allow traitors to get a running start before they are executed for their crimes?
Oh, snap.
But by agreeing to this amendment, you're essentially saying that all religion should not be present in France. The only religion that you are asking for with this amendment is just the Constitution of France. There's no freedom here for people or for clergymen because you eliminated all freedom and all lack of choices for those involved in religion.
Are you saying that the Catholic Church is so opposed to the principles on which our great democracy is founded is antithetical to the Catholic Church? If that is the case, if that cannot coexist, then I do not see why it should be tolerated in a true egalitarian society.
Perhaps religion is the last monarchy we must topple.
We do have to recognize that outside of Paris, the Catholic Church is still very much supported and very much loved. Because the people of Paris may not want the Catholic Church doesn't mean that all of France doesn't want it. And there's a high likelihood that if this crowd takes over, as they claim that they will do, then all of France outside of Paris will take over them.
And we also, as a country, we have freedom of religion. We still have the freedom to be the individual. That is our Enlightenment principle of just people being people. So again, we can't just kill whoever we want, and we can't kill anybody who disagrees with us. As long as their actions are no longer a direct consequence to the state, they should be allowed to be.
Anyone who doesn't declare loyalty to France is a direct threat to the state. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask our clergy to take the oath. And if they refuse, then that means that they do not bear any love for this country that they claim to want to save. And so I think that it's reasonable that there should be consequences. The Jacobins are not saying that the consequence is death, but the crowd outside might be saying it. So the clergy here might want to take that into consideration. I don't see how you cannot love God and your country at the same time, but while saying you're loyal to your country first and foremost, because that is the people that you serve. You don't serve the souls of Rome, you serve the souls of France.
Additionally, again, the Pope has declared that the people should take up arms and take action against the revolution and everything that we believe. If you do not declare your oath to us, you are declaring your oath to someone who is actively encouraging war against this assembly and the people of France.
Thank you, Susan.
I do believe that Megan would like to speak.
Yes, I guess I just have a question. What threat really do clergy really pose to France if they don't take this oath? There should be some clergy just want the opportunity just to keep serving their flock. But what what threat do they really pose to they aren't going to rise up against their own flock?
And again, if we are representative,
otherwise, we have
if we are representative of all France, if we are representative of our entire country, that includes people in the countryside, that includes people for whom the clergy is a very big part of their daily life. We have to respect all people, not just the mob. We cannot listen to madness.
Then let the people of the rural countryside be served by clergymen who have sworn an oath to France.
You have voted to put the oath into our Constitution. Are you saying there are should be no consequences for breaking the Constitution?
We're saying that you are allowed to leave. If they are not going to serve France, if they will not take the pledge, then there is no need that they need to stay here. We don't have to kill them.
Pitchfork.
We don't have to kill anybody.
They will be allowed to leave.
They can leave
as declared enemies of the state, and whatever fate befalls them is their fate. I'm sure a God-loving priest would agree.
If there are no other comments then of this proposed amendment, and I believe we have two potential amendments, is whether or not there should be an oath and whether or not the punishment for not taking the oath, if clergy should be first allowed to leave before they are, I guess, supposedly killed by the crowd for not taking the oath. So why don't we first vote on the First Amendment, which was whether or not to add the oath to the civil constitution of the clergy. So if you are in support of adding this oath, you may raise your hand now. Seems like about the usual group. And then all those opposed to the measure. Four. So with a 6-4 vote, the oath will be added into the civil constitution of the clergy. Next, we can vote on the proposed amendment to the oath, which would be to allow clergy the chance to leave if they decide that they would not like to take the oath. So any final comments from any National Assembly members before we vote on that?
If they leave, would they still be declared enemies of the state?
I believe that they would likely not be able to return or serve in France, but they will be allowed to leave without being harmed.
I think that would be impossible to, guarantee. We can't guarantee anyone's safety. So I think
we can't guarantee people take the oath either, but we voted on that.
Well, exactly. So I think what we're voting on now is the amendment that anyone who does not take the oath would be allowed to leave, but as a declared enemy of the state.
Yes, but they will not face state persecution as they leave.
Not from this assembly, but from the crowds. We're not in control of the crowd. We're not in control of what happens to them. Certainly, they could not have a death sentence. The Jacobins aren't suggesting that. We are suggesting they are declared enemies of the state so that their position is known. That's what we're suggesting. If you do not take the oath, you are an enemy of the state. You may leave if you wish. You probably would wish because you don't love France. But whatever happens to you happens. We're not voting on what happens to you should you choose to violate your love of country.
But I do believe we at least should enshrine the fact that they have the right to leave. That way there is no ambiguity and no confusion about it.
They can leave as a declared enemy of the state. That's the amendment we are wishing to put forth.
Why would you have to stab somebody in the back when they're already walking away? You know, that is cowardly and that is needless violence. Let them leave.
They're treasonous.
Because they have no religion and no structure for morals anymore. They have lost God.
But yet we still have reason. We still have empathy and compassion and a basic understanding of human decency, in which we do not have to kill people who have admitted that they do not support this and that they are leaving. They're walking away. There's no need to continue senseless violence.
Walking away weakens France. How can we just let them go?
Aren't they like the fifth column? They know what's going on in France. They can immediately run to their friend the Pope and tell him all of our state secrets.
Friends, this is a question of logic. Anyone who doesn't want to take an oath of loyalty to France, by virtue of their not wanting to take this oath, becomes an enemy of the state. We are merely wanting to codify that with an amendment. I'm appealing to your reason.
Very intolerant of all of you, that's what I must say. Rousseau talks about the need for tolerance, and you are not displaying any. You would rather kill somebody than tolerate a difference.
And we've talked about Rousseau, but what of Burke? What of Edmund Burke? How other countries perceive us is just a country of senseless violence. We are killing people in the streets. You know, that is not the nation that we want to represent. That is not a showcase of our Enlightenment values. You know,
it is getting our
what other countries? The countries that are Protestant, the countries that are Anglican,
the countries that are Austria, which is is working with our so-called monarch.
Only one country matters, and that's France. And what we are asking is the clergy to swear loyalty to France. And if they cannot do that, they have declared themselves enemies of the state. We just want to put that in the Constitution. Let's get it in there. Let's get it in writing. If you do not take the oath, you cannot say you are loyal to France. Anyone who is not loyal to France must be an enemy to France.
So after religion, what comes next? Are you going to have to declare an oath to a certain political party? And if not, then comes death?
If somebody says that they don't like you, do you automatically assume that they are your enemy? Yes. Or somebody doesn't smile at you when you're walking down the street.
Oh,
the world is not entirely out to get you. Not everybody is your enemy. Some people
the Pope literally said take up arms against the state of France.
The clergy in the countryside are literally taking up arms against France. This is not the case of we just don't like them. This is the fact that they are essentially functioning as agents of an enemy state within the borders of France. Why do we not require soldiers to take an oath of loyalty?
What about people in the country though? Because again, we are just representative of Paris. There are so many other people that are not included in this assembly right now who are just being completely forgotten about and paved over. We need to remember them and just acknowledge that they are in this, because again, if we go after their clergy, people to who them are very important, then what will they think of us? Then we are not a united France. Then we're not even looking out for France's best interests. We are just looking out for ourselves.
The oath, then they've got nothing to worry about.
We're definitely not a united France when, half of them refuse to say that they're united with France.
How many
people? We're also not united with France. Everybody doesn't agree with you.
This isn't a civil war. This is a group of people that needs to be moderated, but they don't need to be killed.
This is a revolution.
If you're so concerned about
to build a stable nation
now, why have you not been advocating for their inclusion in this assembly? You say you bring them up now only when
I've been trying. I'm technically, if we really want to go at it, I'm president of the assembly, okay? And I was the person that demanded that we take the tennis court oath. I was the one that validated the third estate and made sure that they are part of this assembly. I have always been at the back of the public people, okay?
And we appreciate that and have not threatened to cut your head off yet.
And I very much appreciate that in turn. But what I'm saying is that we cannot start stabbing people who are still symbolic and important to a majority of the people in France.
Yes, and we need order in our country. It just can't be utter chaos, and it can't be anarchy. We need law and order. We need.
I don't have a problem with like not killing people as long as they're loyal to us. It's fine. You can I mean, you're giving them a choice. You're not just killing them needlessly. We're saying like swear an oath to France, or we're not even saying you're going to die.
But
we're just saying you might.
If we start killing the clergy, then the peasant people will not become loyal to the France, and then we will lose half of our population.
Oh,
you know,
would
like,
rather
the
them
peasant
kill
people are
us
loyal to
instead
France.
when the church encourages them to
No
take
one
the
has
arms
to be
against
killed.
us?
It's
You would
not
put
an-
their
it's
lives
not an
above ours when the
ultimatum.
clergy attacks us?
Okay.
If
First of all, the crowd is
Go
technically-
Pope, if what he
the
says
crowd
is
technically
true,
isn't even supposed to be speaking right now. The crowd is just here to watch, and I get that you guys are angry and you want to yell, but technically we have the right to shut you up. Just saying. So we're listening to you and we're choosing to acknowledge this, right? But at the same time, we're not becoming a massacre. We do not need senseless violence in the streets. We are still a legitimate assembly, an enlightened people, and a stable country that wants freedom.
so you're saying we're not part of this?
I never said that.
We are your representatives.
Listen,
You
guys.
allowed us to make laws on your behalf. That's what a republic is.
Yeah, we can
Let
take
us
that
do
away.
that.
And one of
Why
the laws,
would you?
One of the laws
the alternative chaos.
we already voted on was that we would make our clergy take an oath. Am I correct? A lot of us said, yes, you should have to take this oath and declare your loyalty to France. What purpose does that oath have if there are no consequences for those who do not take it?
There are consequences, though. Just
Consequences.
because they're not being declared enemies of the state doesn't mean they're not consequences. They will not be paid and they will be forced to leave. You know, like, we don't need to threaten them with death in order for that to be the final consequence. There are steps before that.
They're already being threatened.
What purpose? What purpose would causing all this, what the senseless violence do? What purpose? Like, how is it? How would dissenting like clergy learn after they're killed? They won't. You're
not going to learn anyway. If you don't agree now, you're never going to agree. The clergy have made it very clear that they are not open to consideration of any other point of view besides the one from Rome.
His name is literally Go Pope.
Which is
not
why,
Viva la
Not
France.
just Rome, it's from God.
Which is why we
Why is he still
allowing,
talking?
we are,
Proud.
because he's actually a member of
Why
this
does God have to go
assembly.
through
He
Rome and
has
not
the right to
France?
talk in this, which is why we are allowing the priests who do not wish to take the oath to leave. They will not threaten France from the inside if they do not wish to take the oath.
And
If
all
they
we
don't
are
want to, they can freely leave, and then they are not allowed to come back, which is a part of it.
Yes, and so that would be us declaring them enemies of the state. It is not a death sentence from the assembly in the Constitution. We are not saying that anyone who takes the oath will die. We are simply saying anyone who takes the oath is an enemy of the state and should leave. For their
But
own
that also
sake.
then enemies of the state deserve to die. So they're adding together, and if you're an enemy of the state, you deserve to die.
Oh, sir, you said
Run
it.
fast enough, you won't.
Okay, crowd, we're gonna have to silence you if you are just like keep threatening people. Like, that is not what we're about. We are a civil legislative body, and we're gonna talk about this instead of threatening people with pitchforks and guillotines. So
I think the way that this is going, I do not believe either amendment is really going to be well received either way. Would we be okay with simply moving on rather than trying to debate this oath for 20 or 30 more minutes?
Just to be clear, we already passed that First Amendment, right?
The oath. We
Yeah.
passed the oath itself. That is what is passed.
So it's literally just a corollary, just like an asterisk. It's not even, I mean, it just goes hand in hand.
I think it will probably be better to move on. That way we can figure out our government structure before
What if we come
continue
back to it?
If we have time, we can push it into the end if there is time.
I am ripping up an aristo, and the Parisians are storming the assembly.
Yeah.
Started.
I mean, we could have avoided this by, just hand in hand.
I don't have it
corollary.
printed out, but
Yeah!
Woo! Yeah, I'm gonna call the National Guard at this point.
Drag Go
Right.
Pope out of the legislative area. Where's the guillotine, lads?
At this moment, we'll need to roll the dice to see if the National Guard, will mount a defense of the assembly, or if it joins the crowd. And so I'm rolling dice, and
I don't even know what I'm rooting for now. Honestly.
chaos, Ellie, that's what you're rooting for.
well, the riot has succeeded, and it's not the crowd has not taken over, but you have scared off at least one of the more conservative members of the clergy. So
Go Pope, sad to see you go.
Great job, folks. You really got into it. Everybody can turn their cameras on now. And let's give a hand to all of the participants who did a fabulous job of arguing for their perspectives. Really great, really great. And very, every time you said chop chop, I just couldn't stop laughing. So it was good that I was muted. So in fact, the civil constitution of the clergy did pass. There was an attempt on the part of the Jacobins to pass that amendment that the clergy would be enemies of the state. And when that amendment got passed, the Jacobins knew full well the king would veto it. And so, and in actual fact, we don't have a king today, but the king would veto it. And that would instigate a riot like the riot that has just occurred. And it hastened the demise of the constitutional monarchy, because the constitutional monarchy did allow the king to have this suspensive veto, which allowed him to delay legislation for up to 2 legislatures. So, I mean, we're talking about 6 years, which is, you can't wait 6 years to enact a law. So that suspensive veto was pretty controversial, especially when he used it, as has been, and in fact, this has happened several times in our games as well. When we've done the full-fledged game, it's often the king's veto instigates massive uprisings. So I think I'll just turn it over and ask, comments, questions, folks who participated, what do you have any, any conclusions you want to draw? Folks who are observing, any questions you want to ask? Everyone should participate in this discussion.
I think it was this exact same one when the crowd that caused the crowd to storm in my year that we did this, Beth. I think the crowd ended up killing Abbe Moret after after the king vetoed it, and he had to join the crowd. Poor guy.
Yes, there was in fact an early riot with a death. Yes, and Abbey Mori, he was really mad and he didn't want to actually.
He was not happy with me, but he, because I was Danton that year. I actually, in preparation for this, went and found my old newspaper prep articles written in preparation for today's session, and I got personal with the poor guy.
That's great. That's really good that you used your papers, to help you. That's exactly why you write the newspaper articles. Great.
I have a question for the alums who participated tonight, and I see a lot of them. You did this 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago in class, and now we're doing it again. Now that you're out of college, looking back on the experience, what did, role playing, what particular skills or habits of mind did it help you develop that you've, found valuable after college?
Twofold. It helped me learn to debate, and it also, really prepared me for the life of playing Dungeons and Dragons after college.
There's also a more wholesome aspect to it, especially with debating or arguing, as it sometimes felt like we were getting into tonight, of like, you still do have to sort of understand the other person's viewpoint to know, in our case, how you can best persuade them. I don't think we did a very good job tonight, but that's okay. But in life, it's sort of useful to be like, oh, okay, I can see what your goals are. What are my goals? How do you sort of debate around them or through them or use them together? And that's always really valuable, I think, in any sort of context of life these days.
I think the other thing too, for me, it really helps to learn a whole bunch of different sides of a thing, because you never know who you're going to be in class. So you kind of have to learn everything. And then when you're told who you are, then you really have to learn about a person, even if you don't agree or don't care about what they think. Like, you have to learn it and you have to support it.
I think also there was something really interesting I played an actual historical character, and so I really got into learning about his life, his perspectives, his arguments, really get it, which made the second half of class where we talked about what happened more generally interesting for me, because I'd focused my research efforts and my preparation efforts on understanding Rousseau and the things that the crowd cared about, and didn't do as much about the things that were clergy centered or anything like that. So I found it really interesting way to go in depth on a particular topic.
Yeah, I agreed with that. Just creating that sense of virtual or historical empathy, with people in the past and the situations that they found themselves in, and the difficult, decisions that they have to make. And then also too, it's in the course of preparing, you have to understand everything that, motivated them or was influencing them, affecting them, and how in turn that affected historical events and how they ended up playing out.
I would also, I agree with everything everybody said. I just like to say how much I very much enjoyed playing these games, because it made the learning a lot more personal to a degree. It was that game aspect of, well, I want to win the game. And so you got to study harder and read more of the things. And I feel old now because I think I played this in 2009 or 2010. And this was one of I played this, and then I played another one. I don't remember the professor's name, but it was about the partition of India. And that was very fun as well. And those are two of my favorite things I did in all of my history undergrad, were these games, because like Adam said, it makes you learn the other sides as well and appreciate what their arguments might be, so you can defend against those arguments, or you might find yourself agreeing with those arguments a bit more. and it makes you factor in a lot more than just reading it, writing it down for an essay, or answering a question on a test. You actually have to understand the mechanics of this a bit more. And I feel I probably would have done a little bit better had I, been in the class right now.
and had you not been threatened constantly by this?
Yeah, sorry, it's been a couple of years since I took that class, and I've kind of forgot a bit about the French Revolution in term.
Well, but you did quote, you were quoting, so, from the, texts, so.
Yeah, I was. It's fun because also you have to ground. At a certain point you have to still also keep it grounded in the actual course material. Otherwise, you're just arguing to win an argument that you start to lose. You're not in the 1790s anymore. Now you're in 2021, and you kind of have to keep it in all of those parameters. And I don't know. I really like these games, and I think they're a very valuable asset as far as history pedagogy goes. And yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
I gotta say, it was really nice to hear people arguing passionately about an issue that's not hot button today. I think it was very nice. It's a nice like break out of the two-party system we've got going, where there's a set of opinions that belongs to one party and a set of opinions that belongs to another institutionalized party, and that's it. It was really nice to hear just a different issue entirely, and then that would in turn allow you to connect it in more complex and less partisan ways to our current atmosphere.
And even if you look at it from like a non-academic perspective, this is just a lot of fun to do. And like you remember doing it. Like I was talking in my group about how I saw the Jacobin that killed me last summer at a Black Lives Matter rally. And I was like, with my twin, I was like, that's the kid that killed me. Like I got inherently angry and she was just so confused. I was like, I'm still mad about it. But it's just, you like see people and you make good friendships and like just have really weird relationships with people when this class is done.
Yeah, I was a freshman when I took this class, and most of the people who took it with me were juniors and seniors, or some sophomores. But I just remember so I didn't have a lot of classes with them, but whenever I encountered them after the class, a lot of them had some pretty vivid recollections of this class.
I think I messaged you, Steph, at the beginning and was like, oh yeah, of course you're here. And of course you're the crowd. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I really could. I think if Beth had asked me to be anything else, I might have had to say no.
Well, I do want to say, from my perspective, it's always, so much fun to watch students get so engaged, right, in 18th century, ideas. The games require students to do many of the things that they would do for a traditional test or an essay. Use evidence to construct an argument about a historical event, or a historical character's position on an event, analyzing multiple factors that lead to a particular historical outcome. And students, of course, write essays, but not traditional ones. In the case of the French Revolution, they're writing newspaper articles that present their 18th century personas' interpretations of, what's being debated at the National Assembly. So they're doing many the very things that we want students in a history course to do: analyze texts, think critically, write persuasive arguments, but it's really different when it's really different when you're doing it as part of a game with the kind of incentive, there that you want to win, and in a way, it's like, it's also, you're playing a character. And so you can really kind of get into it and know that, you don't have to agree with these ideas, but you do want to win. So you are going to articulate them.
Yeah, I think it really, having it was, I definitely can't think of another thing I did for education purposes in undergrad that was nearly as all consuming, except maybe my master's, except maybe my thesis. Just like, cause it was, it's one of those things where it became just a thing that I did put a lot of, not just work, but other things too. Like I recently, about a month ago now, I had got the Facebook memory from the day that the night before the final part of the game, the night before, I, being the crowd, went into Ricarda late at night and put up anti-royal propaganda throughout Ricarda and the HBC, and it was just a lot of, and just I made a post afterwards saying ready for the game tomorrow, smiley face, and the response was from the guy who played King Louis, oh no, period. And it's just one of those moments where it carried not a lot. I can't say I posted about a lot of my assignments on Facebook, but this one I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put this out there and accidentally terrify the King of France in the process.
I think there's something just inherently wonderful about playing these games. Like, I've told so many people that, you just love this class because you get to do these role-playing games. And I think it helps people get more interested in history, because a lot of times people have that preconception, that misconception that history is, stuffy and old and boring. And then you do games like this and it's just fun. You're reading, you're doing the reading, you're doing the writing, but you're doing it in a way that makes it exciting to learn and exciting to get to, because no offense, Tyler, but it's really fun to, yell at people and to have these arguments and to just kind of get that pent up anger out that we've all just been feeling since, COVID and lockdown and everything. I don't know, it's just really fun to be able to see people, even if it's on the computer, and to be able to do activities again. I think it's great.
I've played a number of games since COVID and done it online, and it does seem to create a lot of community. It gets people working together in ways that you can work together, when you're socially distant. So it's actually been quite it's been quite successful for that. And I think something that you also touch on, and I think is also really, from my perspective, one of the things that I think, one of the reasons why I like this role-playing game so much is that it enables the discovery that nothing's inevitable and that people's actions matter. And earlier I mentioned that, this is not a simulation, it is a role play. And there are, at different points, the choices that someone makes, even the choice of whether you show up or not, can make a difference. And I think it's also important, students see that when their arguments and hard work persuade other students to their persona's viewpoint, they can see that their, people matter. When they see that some poorly written speeches that don't take evidence into account get challenged, they can see, people's work, what one does matters. And of course, sometimes you also learn that life is not fair and that forces outside of one's control can thwart the best laid plans. So I think it gives students a more complex understanding of the past, in part because they have this emotional and intellectual investment in it. So that's another reason why I think it's a useful, one of the things that I like about using these games.
I'm looking at the time, and it is almost 8:30. And I from all the student testimonials and the alum testimonials, it's very clear that this game creates community. And I think that people might want to hang out in the Zoom and catch up. But I also don't want to make anybody who has other plans or other things that they need to do please don't feel like you need to stay. The last thing that I will ask you, though, is to check your email and look for next publicity about our upcoming Tegeder Berg Society events. We hope to have a social later this summer if progress on COVID will allow it. If not, our next event will be in the fall. So again, thank you everyone for attending. I hope that you had fun. It was great to see all of you, and it was really fun for me to watch you debate passionately about this topic.
It was super fun for me too. It was kind of like, like the dream team, having folks come back and play your characters again. Like that was that was really fun. That was really, really fun.